And welcome to another episode of the Culture Effect podcast. We have a wonderful episode for you today. I have Mr. Kevin Cooke. He's a Kentucky State University graduate, and I'm excited to speak with him today. So, hey, Kevin, how are you?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Adrena?
I am good. I'm amazing. Yeah, I'm excited to speak with you today. So, Kevin, here he's the chief FOIA and privacy officer for the housing and urban development. So, we're going to get all into that and his experience in Kentucky State. So, let's go ahead and get into it. Um, so, give us a little bit of your background, Kevin, before getting to Kentucky State.
Sure. So I am from Lexington, Kentucky, and so a big part of who I am is being from the Bluegrass State, being from Lexington. Um, Grew up in Lexington with two sisters and mom and dad. Went to Bryan Station Senior High School there in the city. Also, colors are green and gold, just like Kentucky State. Um, from there, went to Kentucky State, majored in math, and had a lot of different experiences there. From joining my fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha, to some different jobs and working in some different fields, which I know we're going to talk about. But that's kind of the basis, of course, is just growing up in Kentucky and Lexington and evolving from high school to college. A lot of my relatives went to Kentucky State, including my grandmother, my great aunt, both attended Kentucky State, and cousins and other relatives. So it's pretty much our family school. Couldn't convince my daughter to go there. She is a rising sophomore at North Carolina A&T. She doesn't like me telling this story, but I talked to her about going to Kentucky State, and she didn't necessarily want to go there, but she didn't want to offend me. So her comment to me was that she's from Maryland and I'm from Kentucky, and I said, well, by that logic, you should be going to school in Maryland, versus going to North Carolina A&T. But she's really happy with her choice, and she's doing well, so we're proud of her.
That's good. I mean, she's still continuing on in the HBCU legacy. So, she's still a part of the family. So,
Yes, she is. Okay, she is fourth generation on my side and third generation on her mother's side. So I'm glad that she made that choice. We didn't press that on her in terms of where she wanted to go to school, but I think it was just sort of exposure and understanding good things that have come and can come out of HBCUs. And so she made that choice on her own. Out of about 12, 13 schools she applied for, only a couple of them were majority schools. The rest of them were HBCUs. So something in her got put there, and I'm glad that she went there.
and so, I was gonna ask you next, like, what inspired your decision to attend Kentucky State? But you said it's like a family tradition, so I'm assuming that pretty much.
That it's a quick story. That had something to do with it, but it also had something to do when I thought about I might go somewhere else. My original intent, I was thinking about going to Hampton, which is where my grandmother's brother is a Hampton graduate. And so a few things happened. I decided that I might stay at home, and actually ended up going to University of Kentucky for a year, and ran into my high school counselor, Tapa Clay, who was a Kentucky State graduate and also a neighbor. And she was my guidance counselor when I was at Bryan Station. But at that time, she had moved on, and she was in charge of the admissions office at Kentucky State. So I ran into her. I think it was at the grocery store or something. I don't remember where I ran into her. It's been a long time now. And she talked to me about what I was doing, how I was going. I told her I was at University of Kentucky. She asked me what happened to Hampton. I told her it was a long story, but and so she told me I needed to get my butt down to Kentucky State. I would do much better down there than I was doing at the University of Kentucky. And so went down, and with her help got admitted and everything basically in one day. I met the criteria, but obviously she influenced that, and that's how I ended up Kentucky State. And what I say now is that's where I should have been from day one. So it was a twisted path, but I made it, where I was supposed to be.
Yeah, right. It came full circle when you ended up there. So
Yeah.
so throughout your time at Kentucky State University, you've been a member of Alpha Phi Fraternity Incorporated. What are some of the things that, or some of the life lessons that Kentucky State University taught you that you still can, and also being a member of your fraternity, have taught you that you carry over to this day in your career?
What I would say, the first thing that I got out of Kentucky State is about how important that influencers and mentors can be. And I'll just name a few. The vice president of academic affairs at that time was Dr. Kathy Rosebud, who, of course, she's now deceased. But her, I talked about Miss Clay, Ron Banks, and Valeria Shavers, who were in the co-op office. They call it something else now. It's called co-op at that time. Dr. Finley Helm, who was in the math department, Dr. David Adams, who was in the math department. I mean, just I think what I learned most from that is, one, to use the resources that are available to you, to be in a place where people genuinely care about you as a person, about your success, and what it's going to take for you to be great. And I got all of that at Kentucky State University. The other thing I would say is just that you can do anything. Everything is possible, and that the things that you think might hold you back, you can overcome those things, and that you are as good as anyone, and you're prepared for anything and everything. And that those folks who made other choices in terms of majority schools or whatever, they're not better prepared than you are for success in life. And so I certainly got that from Kentucky State, that you can do anything, and that we're going to prepare you for life. And so obviously my experiences in the fraternity, the same thing. I was unfortunately, but at a funeral this weekend, and it was a friend of mine whose mother passed and happens to be a Delta. And one of the poems that was read at her memorial service was Invictus, which is a poem that I learned 30 years ago, pledging the fraternity. And those words and that meaning came back to me immediately. And so again, the tests that you face and the things that you need to overcome, there's strength within you to be able to do that. And so that was, started by my parents and then enforced by people I came in contact with at Kentucky State. Too many to mention. I won't try to mention everybody. And also the members of the fraternity that brought me in and continue to support me, and mentors and friends that I developed through those relationships, both the school as well as fraternity.
Mm. And you mentioned something too. You said that a lot of people, which I think more people are starting to see, that HBCUs do prepare you like the majority schools. 'Cause I think for a while, some people had the stigma that what's an HBCU, you won't be able to get the same opportunities. But I mean, and I'm even going to read a little bit of your bio, because you have this long bio and history. Clearly, we know Kentucky State prepared you for everything. So I'm just reading a little bit of your bio here, and for those you all that's tuning in, just to know a little bit about Kevin's history. You have over 30 years of experience, and ensuring federal compliance, formulating, designing, and implementing information technology and business solutions, as well as managing human relations, budgets, contracts, and programs for federal agencies. Prior to this appointment, you were the Deputy Chief Information Officer, responsible for providing leadership and strategic direction for IT investments, which support the diverse portfolio of programs across HUD. So I'm just stop right there for now, but let's kind of get into that for a second, and your most recent position as Chief Freedom of Information Act and Privacy Officer with the Housing and Urban Development. So let's kind of get into that and let's break
Mhm.
that down for people who may not even be aware of what that position is all about. Tell us a little bit about that and your role with the
Okay.
government.
So I'll start with a little bit about the agency. So again, like you said, I work for the Housing and Urban Development Organization, and so probably what people are most familiar with is probably two. We have 19 different missions. The two that people are probably most familiar with, one is going to be the mortgage industry and FHA mortgages, Federal Housing Administration. And so basically, what happens there, the government guarantees mortgages mostly for first time buyers and for low income buyers. And so they work with banks to provide a federal guarantee for those. It also is a program that allows people to put down less than the normal 20% on a house. So that's a big program. A lot of people come in contact with. I certainly brought my first house through that program. The other big thing that a couple of big things that we manage that people are familiar with. One is the public housing authorities or the housing projects, as many people call those. So again, HUD provides the funding to local cities and communities to provide oversight and funding for public housing, for also for like the Section 8 program, which is something probably a lot of people are familiar with. So it's a voucher program that allows people who need that help to get help with paying their rent. The other big program is the Community Block Grant Program, which provides dollars again to cities and communities, counties for infrastructure projects like new schools, new community centers, those kinds of things. So it's a pretty important mission that HUD has, and so I came here about 10 years ago or so after leaving the Department of Energy, and I wanted to come to a place that was going to do a mission that was important to things I cared about, important to my community. And so at that time, I only applied for jobs at a couple of different places. One was HUD, one was the Department of Education. I was also looking at Veterans Affairs and Health and Human Services because, again, what I was focused on, not that the jobs I've had in the past did not have impact on the public and things and people that I cared about, but I wanted to get a little bit closer to that mission. And so interestingly, I got a job at HUD and at Education Federal Student Aid at the same time, and chose to come to HUD based on the relationship I had with the Jerry Williams, who would be my manager at that time. So I evolved through a couple of different jobs since I've been at HUD. And so my recent job since about January or so is kind of an interesting job. So there's two things that, well, among multiple things, but the main two focuses I have now are the Freedom of Information Act, which is basically the federal government has a mandate and a responsibility to provide to its citizens any information that we house, any information that we have about people, about things that we do, the money we spend, about programs we manage. So any of that information is available to the general public through the acronym is FOIA, but it stands for Freedom of Information Act. And so this is a program that's managed by the Department of Justice, and every agency has this same mandate to provide this information. One of the things that I really like about it is it affords a level of transparency to everything that the government does that we should disclose on information we have. So if somebody has a question about what's the vacancy rates in the public housing units, how many units are available, that kind of thing. So we should be disclosing that information instantly, right? In terms of information that the public might have an interest in. And so one of my new initiatives I'm working on is called proactive disclosure. And so it's not waiting for someone, an entity, or the media or someone else to ask for information that we have, but things that we believe we should disclose on a regular basis because the public has some interest in it or should have that information. We're going to do that on a more routine and regular basis. Now that I'm in this position, that's one of the things I'm going to be focused on. The other big area I have some small items too, but the other big area I have is on privacy. And so there's a government act called the Privacy Act, which basically, again, is to ensure that any information that any government agency has about the public, whether it's individuals or the collective public, we have a duty to protect that information to make sure that it's only used in the ways that we've told the public we're going to use them, and that we protect that information so it doesn't become available to people that might use it in a negative way. And so, an example of that for everyone who doesn't work for the government would be when you have these privacy breaches, like with your bank. If you work at Bank of America, that's, I mean, if you use Bank of America, that's happened to you, those kinds of things. And so those are the two biggest things that I'm managing now. And these are both mandates on all federal agencies by the Department of Justice. And pretty important from my perspective. One is the disclosure of what the government's doing. Let's be very transparent in what we do. And two, the protection of private information that we have about individuals and groups to make sure that we only use it in the way that we've told those groups we're going to.
Wow. Well, you do a lot. I mean, you and I'm.
And interestingly, that's not the whole job. So,
Oh
so
wow.
those, yeah, I know, right? So those are the two biggest things. And but I got a good team, of people working with me, and it's a new challenge for me. One of the things I like to do is to do organizational development and build high performing organizations. And so initially, when I was asked to take this challenge on, I wanted to do it on a part time basis and continue to do my previous job. But the further we got into that discussion, I realized it really was a full time job. I didn't know enough about it, sort of looking from the outside in. And what I was told is that it needed some executive leadership and some collaboration skills that I suppose they thought I had. So that's why this happened.
Oh, wow. I mean, but even just listen to you, like I'm learning a lot, even just from hearing about the different departments, especially the privacy part. And
Yeah, that's important.
yeah, no, this is interesting. And here we are. We have a Kentucky State University graduate with us, and you're in charge of putting all this together. So that's exciting to hear. And then maybe let's even back it up a little bit. When you first graduated from Kentucky State, did you get right into that, or was there like some things in between?
Yeah, definitely a progression. And so while I was in school, I did go through like our co-op program. I should know what they're called now. Intern programs. It was called cooperative education at that time. I think it's got a new name, but it's the organization or the part of every university that helps to manage internships for their students. And so initially, I began college as like an electrical engineering major, and so I got an internship in Washington D.C. with the National Security Agency, and so I worked in Washington for a couple of summers and some breaks in the beginning of college. And so that was kind of my introduction to the government. So I was working with DOD, the National Security Agency, and so I just lost it. So there's a movie that Will Smith and Gene Hackman are in that's actually about the National Security Agency. I'll remember the title in a second, but it's Regina King is his wife in that movie. But the agency that Gene Hackman worked for and the folks that were spying on Will Smith in that movie, that is patterned after the place I work, the National Security Agency. That's probably the most interesting fact about that. I'll try to think of the name of that movie in a minute for that reference. But so I went from there to another internship program that I needed a job all year round, like a lot of students. And so went back to Ms. Shavers and Mr. Banks and said I needed a job, but I needed one all year round. And so started working for the Department of Interior. All these are federal agencies. The United States Department of the Interior, I worked for the Office of Surface Mining in Lexington, Kentucky. So I worked there part time during the school year, and then full time during breaks. And so after I graduated, they hired me as a full time employee. And while I was there, I thought about going back to DC, but then some other forces took me to Cincinnati, Ohio, and ended up moving there and got a job with the Department of Energy. I like to tell this part of the story because this goes back to the reason that we're here is talking about HBCUs and connections and how these things can be great. And so there was a connection that Kentucky State had with the Department of Energy, and that connection was there were a couple of their employees who were from Kentucky State and were really pushing a connection with our university. So some Bill Wynn and Jackie Shoulders and some other folks who were already there, and they created like an intern program that a lot of people from Kentucky State were able to take advantage of. And this is with the Department of Energy, and it was actually a nuclear facility, a nuclear plant that was in Fernald, Ohio, which is right outside of Cincinnati. And so when I needed to get another job, I wanted to leave Lexington. So Mr. Banks, Ron Banks, connected me to William Wynn, who was the head of accounting for that office. So it wouldn't be that I would be working in his office because I was a technology guy. But what he did was he was the one who created this connection, this program between the Department of Energy and Kentucky State University, and introduced me to the person at that time, James Smotherman, Kim Briggs, who were over and in charge of information technology for those sites in Ohio. There's about 4 or 5 nuclear plants that are in Ohio. And so anyway, that's how I got that job. Again, I interviewed, but I got the connection because of Kentucky State. And then there was an HBCU connection as well, because the 2 gentlemen that I would wind up working for, one of them went to Prairie View and one of them went to Texas Southern. And so there was an instant, HBCU connection, and they just happen to be alphas as well.
I was looking at that movie when you were talking to Enemy of the State. Is that it?
Enemy of the State. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you look at that movie and think about sort of the timing of it, there's some very true things in that movie about how surveillance happens and that kind of thing. So it was an interesting place to work.
I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch that now that I'm kind of hearing you talk about everything and knowing the relationship. Go back and watch that. Okay. All right. Well, no, this has been good. Like I said, I'm learning a lot of new things and hearing from you about the departments and everything. But as we get ready to wrap this up, this is good. what are some things? Because of course now we have vice president who's an HBCU graduate in the White House. So we have now. I feel like honestly over the past year, there's been a lot of light shed on HBCUs. People becoming more aware of them. So, what are some words of advice that you have for incoming HBCU students or even anyone that's thinking about attending an HBCU?
Well, the first thing, I think it is awful that we're having a conversation about the relevance of HBCUs and that we have to continue to have that conversation. If you look at the great graduates that HBCUs have produced over time, and so I think that those examples should prove the value of HBCUs. The other thing that I would say in terms of the historical relevance of it, which unfortunately again is sort of still true today, is that the reason we have HBCUs is segregation and other things that happen. And if you look at some of the stats on black doctors, engineers, dentists, and those, the majority of those are still come out of HBCUs. So I think that the reinforcement of the value of those is done every year. When you look at the numbers of people in prominent careers and positions that are from HBCUs. Not saying that you can't get those things from other places, but we're not questioning PWIs, right? So I don't think we should be questioning the value of HBCUs. I certainly got some of the things that we talked about before, and so my conversation with young people and others is that you should consider everything that fits you. And so we kind of made a list when we're talking with our daughter about college. And a lot of that had to do with what was going to be a good fit for her. And so what you got to look at is, what is going to be empowering for you, who's going to support you, who's going to care about you, who's going to ensure that you get the things that you need. And I certainly believe, obviously, I'm a product of them, and members of my family as well, that you can get all of that from an HBCU in the same way, or maybe even in a greater way than you can get from a predominantly white institution. And so I think that looking at what'll work for you, the decisions that you make are the same decisions you would make for any college. What's going to fit? Do they have your major? Are you going to be able to make good connections for either a career, or is it going to prepare you for entrepreneurship? Those kinds of things. So I would say that you should strongly consider HBCUs as a viable college choice while you're going through that process, and that we should encourage that and support that in universities. Something interesting that I noticed in trips I've made to Greensboro to visit our daughter, everybody in Greensboro has North Carolina A&T shirts on everywhere you go. Doesn't matter whether they went there or not, but that city supports that university. I wish I could say that same thing about every city and every community that is surrounded by an HBCU. And it's not because necessarily someone went there, but they do it. Now, when you look at majority schools, again, I'm from Kentucky, and I am a University of Kentucky Wildcat fan, for the basketball team. And so I see plenty of people that have University of Kentucky things on, that the only connection they have is that they are a sports fan or they're from, the local area. Nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying, let's support our HBCUs in the same way. And so that's one of the things I've thought about for the last year. And I'm going to make that a mission to see that people in Kentucky all over support Kentucky State in the same way, just because we should, because it's our university in the state of Kentucky.
Mm. I love how you said that because I went to Tuskegee and I can honestly say the same thing. It's like being
Uh, One
you
of
got,
my good friends, I'm gonna have to give him a shout out. To actually, two of them, Chris Green and Adrian Gardner, I'll send this to them, are Tuskegee graduates, and you cannot say anything without them working Tuskegee into the conversation. So I certainly have been exposed to the Tuskegee hype.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. You know, it brought me back when you said when you go to Greensboro. I've never been to Greensboro before, but I mean, honestly, that's really how it is in Tuskegee. Everybody,
Mhm.
you'll
I
see
agree.
somebody with a Tuskegee shirt on or something. So it's definitely, yeah,
It's how it should be.
yeah. And I have to make my way to I said this year I want to make my rounds, especially with homecoming and things coming back, but really just to see the different HBCU campuses and all the history, so much history
Yeah.
behind all of them. So yeah, well, no, that was
You
good.
let me know when you're going. I'll meet you there. I'll make sure you get a personal tour.
Okay, I appreciate it for sure. I'm gonna get my dates and everything lined up. Yeah, well, no, this has been good, Kevin. I've enjoyed speaking with you. And hopefully the viewers, thank you all for tuning in. Everyone got some good information. Is there any final words, anything you want to add before we go?
Again, I just want to thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it. It's always a pleasure to talk about Kentucky State and sort of what it's meant to me. The things I've done professionally are good, but the foundation came from Kentucky State, and so now this job that I have is good. But my most important mission is again to try to make sure that my daughter is able to say the same things that I'm saying about her university. And so we got 3 more years before she's done. But that'll be the most important thing I've accomplished is to be the father of another HBCU graduate. So I thank you for having me, and look forward to talking to you in the future. And if we make this way down to Kentucky State, we'll have to do a live broadcast from the university.
Oh yeah, most definitely. That'll be nice. That'll be nice. Yeah. Yes. Well, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.